I still remember the day my son was born. I was not a rich man, not even close. Just a simple farmer with rough hands and a back that ached from bending over the fields too many years. But when I held that tiny little baby in my arms for the first time, all the pain in my bones vanished. His small fingers wrapped around my thumb, and in that moment, I promised myself, I will give this boy everything I never had, even if it costs me my life. Life in the village wasn't easy. Our land was small, and the harvest was never enough. Some years, after paying off debts and feeding the family, I had nothing left but a few coins. But every time I looked at my son, my little Armin, I felt rich. His smile was my wealth, his laughter my treasure. When he was old enough for school, I sent him, even though the other villagers laughed at me. Books don't fill stomachs, they said, but I believed differently. I had seen enough of poverty to know I wanted him far away from it. He would not live and die in these fields, breaking his back as I had. He would become someone greater, someone respected. But education costs money, money I did not have. So I made my first sacrifice. I sold my father's land, the only inheritance left to me. My father had died working that soil, and it had been passed to me with pride. Selling it broke something inside me. But I told myself, land can be bought again, but my son's future never. I can still recall the look on the buyer's face when I signed the papers with trembling hands. That land had been my roots. Giving it away felt like cutting off a piece of myself. But I smiled through the pain, because I thought of Armin wearing a crisp shirt, sitting in a college classroom, not worrying about empty plates or muddy shoes. I worked harder than ever after that. I took up labor in the city, carrying bricks under the hot sun. I cleaned warehouses, swept floors, even collected scrap metal at night. My body grew weaker, but my determination grew stronger. I told myself every bruise was worth it, every scar was a step closer to success. Whenever I sent him money, I would write letters. Study well, my son. Remember, knowledge is the one thing no one can steal from you. And whenever he replied, his words gave me life. Don't worry, Baba. I will make you proud one day. Those words, they were like medicine for my tired heart. I remember saving every rupee for his books, his hostel fees, his clothes. I wore the same torn kurta for years, never buying myself a single new thing. When my shoes split open at the sole, I tied them with rope instead of replacing them. When I was hungry, I drank water and told myself I was full. Everything was for him. The villagers started calling him the educated one's son. I held my head high when they said that. Finally, I thought my sacrifices were not in vain. Every night, before sleeping on the cold floor of my small rented room, I dreamed of the day my son would stand tall in the city, educated, respected, successful. And in that dream, he would look at me with gratitude, with pride, and say, "You gave me everything, Baba. Now let me take care of you." I lived on that dream. I breathed it, clung to it, survived on it. I had no idea then how cruel reality would become. When Armin left for the city, I walked with him to the bus stop, holding his suitcase as if it carried my own heart inside it. I couldn't stop staring at him in that crisp shirt and polished shoes, clothes I had bought with money that had cost me blood and sweat. Study hard, my son, I told him. Don't forget your roots. He nodded, barely looking at me. His eyes were fixed on the road ahead, the bus that would take him to a life I could only dream of. I told myself he was just nervous, maybe shy to show emotion. But as the bus pulled away and he didn't wave back, something inside me ached. Still, I consoled myself. He will understand one day. He will know what I have done for him. The first year, he called often. His voice carried excitement. "Baba, the city is so big. So many lights, so many people. My friends come from rich families, but don't worry, I'll make a name for myself too." Every call filled me with hope. I would close my eyes and imagine him walking proudly in those city streets. My son, the son of a poor farmer, standing shoulder to shoulder with the wealthy. But slowly, the calls became shorter, less frequent. Weeks passed without a word. I would sit by the small borrowed phone in the tea shop, waiting, hoping. Sometimes, I dialed his number myself, but it would ring and ring with no answer. When he finally did call, his tone was different, sharper, colder. "Baba, please don't call so much. I'm busy. My friends are here, and I don't want to be disturbed." Disturbed? I bit my tongue, swallowing the hurt. He was young, maybe stressed with studies. I told myself not to take it personally. The next time I visited the city to see him, I carried a small bag of food, homemade pickles, sweets, and his favorite flatbreads. I wore my best clothes, though they were still patched and faded. I was nervous, but excited, eager to see his room, his world. When I reached his hostel, the guard looked me up and down with disgust. "Who are you?" he asked. "I'm Armin's father," I said proudly. He smirked and pointed upstairs. When Armin opened the door, his face froze. Not with happiness, but with embarrassment. "Baba, what are you doing here without telling me?" he whispered harshly, glancing behind him. Inside, I saw his friends, boys in expensive clothes, laughing and chatting. "I brought food for you, my son," I said, holding out the bag like an offering. My hands trembled when I saw his eyes, cold, uneasy, almost ashamed. "Not now, Baba. Please. My friends will see. I'll come to the village when I'm free." And just like that, he closed the door. I stood there, still holding the bag. I could hear his laughter mixing with his friends, pretending as if I didn't exist. That night, I sat by the roadside, clutching the food I had carried miles to give him. For the first time, doubt entered my heart. I had sold land, my pride, my very soul for this boy. And now, was he ashamed of me? No, I told myself. He's just young. He'll grow. He'll change. He will remember who I am. But deep inside, a small, painful truth whispered, perhaps the city has already taken him away from me. After that day at the hostel, something Something inside me cracked, but I tried to hold it together. I told myself it was just one bad moment. My son was busy with studies, surrounded by city people, maybe embarrassed by my village clothes, but in his heart, he would still love me. I clung to that belief like a drowning man clings to driftwood. Months passed, then years. Armin graduated with honors. I wasn't there at the ceremony. He said it was too far and too much trouble for me to come. Instead, I celebrated alone in my tiny room, cooking a simple meal and whispering to myself, my son is now an educated man. Soon, he'll be someone important, and he did become important. He got a big job, then bigger jobs, until his name was known even in our village. People came to me with pride in their voices, your son is a big man now. We saw him in the newspaper. Every time, I felt my chest swell. Yes, that's my boy. But the truth was harsher. The bigger he became, the smaller my place in his life grew the first time I visited him in his new apartment. I wore freshly washed clothes, though they were still patched at the elbows. My hands were rough from labor, my shoes tied with rope. But my heart was light. I was going to see my son, my blood, my pride. I knocked on his polished wooden door. He opened it, and for a moment, I saw the flicker of recognition and then shame. Baba, why didn't you call before coming? He asked, glancing nervously over his shoulder. Behind him stood a woman, his wife, dressed in jewelry and silk. She looked me up and down like I was dirt on her floor. This is your father, she asked, her voice dripping with disdain. Armin forced a smile, but his eyes betrayed him. He was ashamed of me. Yes, this is Baba, he muttered, almost whispering. She wrinkled her nose. You should have told me he was like this, like this. Those two words cut deeper than any blade. I stepped forward, holding out a small gift I had brought, a wooden frame I had carved myself, with our family photo inside. My hands trembled, but I smiled. For your home, I said softly. She didn't take it. She looked away, disgusted. Armin took it reluctantly, placing it on a table as if it were a burden. We sat for dinner, but I felt like an intruder. The table was filled with dishes I had never seen before, but no one asked if I liked them. I ate quietly, each bite tasting of shame. When I tried to speak about the village, about how proud everyone was of him, his wife interrupted. You should tell your father not to come unannounced. It's embarrassing when guests are here. Embarrassing. That word echoed in my ears. After dinner, when I stood to leave, I hoped, prayed, that Armin would stop me, that he would say, stay, Baba. This is your home too. But he only said, next time, call before you come. I walked back into the night, holding my empty bag. My heart was heavier than it had ever been. That night, I lay awake on my floor mat, staring at the cracked ceiling. I remembered the days I had skipped meals so he could eat, the nights I had worked under the cold moon so he could study. And now, I was an embarrassment. A father who gave up everything, reduced to nothing in the eyes of the very son he had built his life around. I told myself, endure, forgive. Maybe he will change. But deep inside, a storm was brewing. A storm I could no longer control. It was a wedding. A grand one, filled with lights, music, and laughter. Not mine, not anyone from our village, but one of Armin's business associates. Word had reached me that my son would be there, dressed in fine clothes, among powerful people. I hadn't seen him for months. My heart ached for his face, for even a single smile directed my way. I told myself, maybe if I go, he will introduce me proudly. Maybe, for once, he will let the world know that the man who gave him life is standing by his side. I wore the cleanest clothes I owned. They were old, faded, but I washed them twice, stitched the torn sleeves again, and polished my cracked shoes until they shone faintly. I even carried a small gift for him, a pen made of silver, something I had saved up for. My son, the big man, should have something elegant from his father. When I reached the wedding hall, I was overwhelmed. Golden lights hung everywhere, chandeliers brighter than the sun, tables overflowing with food I had never seen before. Rich men left, their wives glittering with jewels. I felt small, out of place. But then I saw him, Armin. My son. He looked so handsome, dressed in a tailored suit, his hair shining, his wrist heavy with an expensive watch. He was surrounded by people, shaking hands, smiling, commanding respect. My chest swelled with pride. That was my boy, my blood. I stepped forward, weaving through the crowd, my gift in hand. Armin, I called, my voice trembling with love. He turned. His smile faded the moment his eyes landed on me. Baba, he muttered, almost like a curse. The people around him turned too, curious. I smiled, extending the gift. My son, I came to see you. Look, I brought something for you. Whispers began in the crowd. Some of them laughed quietly. Others stared at my patched clothes, my worn-out shoes. I heard someone whisper, is this his father? A villager. Armin's face turned red, not with joy, not with pride, but with shame. His wife stepped forward, her lips curling. What is he doing here, Armin? In front of everyone, she hissed. I just came to bless my son, I stammered. My hand holding the gift trembled. I only wanted to see him happy. Armin grabbed my arm, pulling me aside harshly. His grip hurt. His eyes were cold. Why did you come here? He snapped in a low voice. I told you before, don't show up like this. Look at you. Do you want to humiliate me in front of everyone? My heart stopped. Humiliate? Me? The man who had broken his bones to give him this life? I am your father, I whispered, my voice shaking. How can a father humiliate his own son? But he wasn't listening. He shoved the gift back into my hands. Go. Leave now. Don't ever come to my events again. People like you don't belong here. Those words. People like you don't belong here. I felt the room spin. I looked into his eyes, searching for the boy who once held my finger and promised to make me proud. He wasn't there anymore. All I saw was a stranger, a man ashamed of the very soil that made him. I left the hall in silence, the silver pen still clutched in my fist. Outside, the music was still playing, laughter echoing, but to me, the world was silent. silent. That night, sitting alone under a streetlight, I cried for the first time in years. Not because my son had rejected me, but because I realized the truth. I no longer had a son. And from that moment, something inside me died, and something darker was born. After that night at the wedding, I became a ghost in my own life. Something inside me had cracked so deeply that even my own breath felt like a burden. I stopped going to the city. I stopped waiting at the tea shop for the phone to ring, hoping it was him. And I stopped carrying that small bag of food whenever I traveled, because there was no son left to receive it. But a father's love, it is a strange curse. You can bury it under shame, drown it in tears, even try to kill it with anger, but it refuses to die. Deep inside, even when my heart was shredded, I still prayed for him. When I lit the old oil lamp at dusk, I whispered, God, keep my son safe. Even if he never looks back at me, protect him. Life, however, grew merciless. My body was no longer the same. My back, bent from years of labor, groaned with every movement. My hands shook when I tried to lift heavy loads. My knees felt like rusted hinges, refusing to support me for long. Employers who once called me brother now looked at me with pity, or worse, with irritation. Old man, one supervisor said as he shoved me aside at a construction site, you're too weak for this work. Go home before you collapse here. But home had nothing waiting for me except silence and a leaking roof. Days passed when my stomach carried nothing but water. Other days, kind neighbors would leave a piece of bread or a bowl of lentils at my door. I, who once toiled day and night so my son could eat meat and rice, now depended on the mercy of strangers. And then came winter. The wind that year was sharper than any blade. It cut through my thin clothes and gnawed at my bones. One night, while gathering sticks for a fire, I collapsed on the cold earth. My chest rattled with coughs that burned like fire, and for a moment I thought, perhaps this is it. Perhaps God has finally decided my suffering is enough. A neighbor boy found me, his small hands tugging at my arm, calling for help. They carried me back, wrapped me in blankets, and nursed me with hot water and herbs. One of them begged me to write to Armin, to call him, to let him know I was dying. But my pride would not let me. How could I, the man who once worked with bleeding hands so my son could live like a prince, now crawl back to him and beg? How could I stand before him and say, save me, when he had already buried me in shame? No, I would rather die quietly, nameless, than hand him the satisfaction of seeing me broken. But fate had one more cruelty in store. One evening, while sitting in the tea shop corner, I overheard men returning from the city. They spoke of Armin with excitement, their voices filled with awe. Do you know how rich he is now? Cars, businesses, apartments. He's living like a king. My chest swelled at first, with the pride that only a father can feel. That's my son. That's the boy I raised. But then came the dagger. He tells people he has no family in the village. One man laughed. Says his father is dead. Can you believe that? Dead. The laughter around that table echoed like thunder in my ears. My teacup slipped from my trembling hand and shattered on the floor. They looked at me, realizing too late what they had said, but I had already heard enough. Dead. My son had not only rejected me, he had buried me with his tongue, erased me from his story. That night, I sat in my dark hut, the oil lamp flickering against the cracked walls, and for the first time in my life, I felt something colder than hunger, sharper than loneliness. I felt hatred. Not for my son, no, never for him, but for the man he had become. I whispered to myself, if I am dead in his world, then so be it. Let him think I am gone. But the dead sometimes rise, and when they do, they are not the same as before. I had nothing left. No land. No man. No strength. No place in the world. Nothing except time, and a heart hardened by betrayal. And that is when I understood a terrible truth. A man who has nothing left to lose is the most dangerous man of all. When a man is stripped of everything, his dignity, his family, even his name, something shifts inside him. I had lived my whole life for my son. I had bent my back until it broke, starved so he could eat, sold the land of my ancestors so he could study. And in return, I was cast away like filth, declared dead by the very blood that carried my name. That night, staring at the flickering lamp in my hut, I whispered to myself, if he has buried me, then let me rise from the grave. But not as the father he once knew. Let me rise as the shadow he cannot escape. It began with silence. I stopped telling anyone in the village about my connection to Armin. I let them believe I was just another forgotten old man. In their eyes, I became invisible, and invisibility is a powerful weapon. But even an invisible man needs strength. So I forced my weary body back to work. Small jobs, odd tasks, anything that put coins in my pocket. I gathered scrap, mended tools, even swept temple floors. Every rupee I earned, I saved. No luxuries, no meals beyond the bare minimum. I was building something only I knew. One evening, fate gave me its first gift. A wealthy landowner from another town came to the village, desperate to sell a piece of farmland quickly. His debts had strangled him, and he needed cash. The land was good, fertile, near a river, but no one had the money to buy it. No one except me. Years of saving, years of denying myself comfort, had left me with just enough. With trembling hands, I placed my bundle of notes before him. He laughed at first, mocking the old man who lived half hungry. But when he counted the money, his laughter died. That day, I became a landowner again. Quietly, secretly. I did not farm the land myself. My body was too weak. Instead, I rented it to sharecroppers, men who needed soil but had no money to buy it. Every season, they paid me a portion. It was not much at first, but it grew. One piece of land became 2, then 3. Slowly, silently, I was planting seeds, not only in the soil, but in destiny. Meanwhile, I kept my ears open. Armin's name was everywhere in the city. Wealth, power, luxury. But I also heard whispers, dark whispers. Business rivals he had cheated. Partners he had betrayed. Deals that were not as clean as they looked. My son was building an empire. Yes, but not on stone. On sand. And sand collapses. I did not smile when I heard this. A father's heart does not smile smile at his son's downfall. But deep inside, I told myself, when the storm comes, I will be waiting. Each night, as I lay on my mat, I carved one sentence into my heart. He killed me with his lies. I will bury him with the truth. My time of begging was over. My time of mourning was over. From now on, every coin I earned, every step I took, every breath I drew was no longer for survival. It was for revenge. The day I bought that first piece of land, something inside me awakened. For years, I had thought of myself as a broken man, an unwanted father, a ghost declared dead. But as I pressed the soil between my fingers, I realized I still had life left in me. Not the life of a doting parent, not the life of a humble laborer, but the life of a man who had been betrayed and now lived for only one purpose. I did not farm the land with my own hands. My body was too frail for that. Instead, I found young men in the village who were desperate for opportunity. I let them work my soil while I took a share of their harvest. They were grateful, and I was careful. I never boasted, never revealed the true extent of what I owned. To the villagers, I was still the bent old man in patched clothes. They saw only my weakness. They did not see the coins I tucked away in silence, the wealth that was slowly but steadily growing. Each season brought more. The land gave grain, and grain gave gold. I bought another field, then another. Small at first, unnoticed. Then larger. By the third year, I owned enough land to rival the very landlords who had once sneered at me. But I remained quiet. A storm does not announce itself before it arrives. At night, when I lay under the dim light of my oil lamp, I thought of Armin. I imagined him sitting at his grand table in the city, drinking wine, signing deals, surrounded by people who praised him. Did he ever think of me? Did his heart ache, even for a moment, remembering the father who had given him everything? The answer came one day, sharp and cruel. A villager returned from the city, carrying newspapers. My son's photograph was on the front page, handsome, proud, draped in wealth. The headline called him a rising star of business. My chest swelled with pride for a moment, but then I read further. The article quoted him, "I come from nothing. I built myself from the ground up. I owe no one for my success. Nothing. He had reduced me, his mother's sacrifices, the land I sold, the hunger I endured, everything, to nothing." I laughed bitterly that night, a laugh that tasted like poison in my throat. If he had cut ties with me in private, that was one thing. But to erase me publicly, to stand before the world and declare that he was self-made, born of dust, owing nothing to anyone, that was his greatest sin. The more he rose, the more arrogant he became. News traveled fast, even to our small village. They said he had built an empire of glass towers and shining cars. They said he walked with politicians, dined with judges, commanded respect everywhere he went. But I also heard the whispers, shady deals, crooked contracts, promises broken. The foundation of his empire was not stone, it was sand, and sand always shifts. I did not rejoice at these whispers. No father rejoices at the thought of his son's downfall, but I stored them carefully, like seeds waiting for rain, because when his empire began to crumble, and crumble it surely would, I would be ready. By then, my fortune had grown. Quietly, I had bought land not only in my village, but in towns beyond. I had shares in markets, investments in businesses run by honest men. I became something I had never dreamed of being, wealthy. Yet still, I wore the same torn kurta, still ate the same dry bread, still bent my back like the old man everyone thought me to be, because I had learned the greatest lesson of my life. Never show the world your hand until it is time to strike. And strike I would. For years, I lived with one thought carved into my heart like stone. He declared me dead. One day, when his false empire falls, he will see the truth. He will see the father he buried return, not as a beggar, not as a weak old man, but as the shadow of his destruction. I was patient, patient as the earth itself, because revenge, like harvest, takes time. And my harvest was coming. Years passed, and in silence, I became strong again, not with muscles or youth, but with something far sharper, patience and wealth hidden in the shadows. By then, I owned enough land and shares that, if I had revealed them, the villagers would have bowed to me. But I wanted no bows, no praise. I wanted silence. Silence is the mask of revenge. Armin, on the other hand, was louder than thunder. His name was everywhere, newspapers, billboards, even television. They called him the golden son of the business world. Reporters wrote of his cars, his mansions, his foreign trips. He gave interviews, always with that proud smile, always declaring, "I built everything on my own. My success is my creation alone." Each time I heard those words, my chest tightened, but not with pain anymore, with certainty, because the higher a man builds on lies, the deeper he will fall when truth arrives. And the cracks, they began to appear. At first, they were whispers. I heard from merchants in the markets I quietly invested in. They said his deals were dishonest. He promised profits but delivered losses. He borrowed from banks using forged accounts. He bribed officials to silence complaints. He is clever, one trader told me, shaking his head. But cleverness without honesty is like a snake eating its own tail. It will destroy him. I listened. I stored every word. Then came betrayal, the kind that destroys kingdoms. His closest business partner, the man who had stood by him in every public event, secretly shifted money into foreign accounts. When the truth surfaced, newspapers called it a shocking scam. Investors panicked. Stocks tumbled. For the first time, my son's perfect smile did not appear in the papers. Instead, his face was captured looking pale, tired, and angry. I read those articles alone at night, the oil lamp flickering above me. And for the first time in many years, I felt something close to satisfaction. Not joy, no. A father cannot rejoice at his child's suffering, but justice. A seed of justice sprouting from the soil of betrayal. But fate was not done. His enemies circled like vultures. Men he had cheated, politicians he had tricked, businessmen he had mocked. They all waited, and now they struck. Lawsuits rained down. Investigations began. His once loyal friends whispered against him in corridors of power. And then came the blow that shook him hardest. His wife, the same woman who had once looked at me with disgust, now abandoned him without hesitation. The day the news broke that his accounts were frozen, she left him. She took jewelry, money, even a house deed, everything she could grab. She filed for divorce, claiming she had been misled by his lies. I sat in silence when I read that headline. My cracked lips curved into a bitter smile. The woman who once called me an embarrassment had shown her true face at last. From there, my son's empire collapsed like a house of cards. Mansions sold, cars repossessed. His company, once celebrated, was dragged through the mud of scandal. Bankers refused to meet him. Politicians denied ever knowing him. The same journalists who once called him golden now wrote, "The fall of a fraud." And where was he? I knew. I saw him one evening, though he never saw me. I had gone to the city quietly to sign papers for one of my hidden investments. As I passed a narrow street near the marketplace, I saw a man sitting on the curb, his face hidden in his hands. His suit was wrinkled, his hair unkempt, but I knew those shoulders, that posture. Armin, my son. He sat there, broken, begging a banker on the phone for one more chance, one more loan, one more miracle. The man who once pushed me away from a wedding hall because I embarrassed him now looked smaller than I had ever seen him. I stood in the shadows, my heart torn. Part of me wanted to step forward, to lift him up, to tell him, Baba is here. Baba will save you. That part of me, the father, still lived. But another voice, louder, darker, whispered in my ear, no. He buried you. He killed you in his world. Let him feel the weight of that grave. So I turned away. But as I walked back into the night, I whispered to myself, not yet, my son. Not yet. When I return to your life, it will not be to rescue you. It will be to show you the face of the father you killed, risen from the ashes you left him in. And when that moment comes, you will know the true meaning of loss. The cracks in his empire had become wounds, and wounds untreated only grow deeper. The storm had only begun. The cracks had widened, and soon, the mighty empire my son had built began to crumble into dust. At first, he tried to fight. I could see it in the newspapers, in the desperate statements he gave to the press. This is a temporary setback, he told them. My vision is stronger than these lies. He still wore suits, still forced to smile for the cameras. But his eyes betrayed him. They no longer carried pride, only fear. And fear spreads quickly in the world of business. Investors pulled out one by one. Contracts were cancelled. Employees who once worshipped him now whispered behind his back, saying they had always known he was arrogant, dishonest. The same politicians who had shaken his hand now turned their faces away when he entered a room. The world had moved on. He was alone. I watched all this from a distance, never revealing myself. Through trusted contacts in the markets, I learned of each step of his downfall. His properties were auctioned. The mansion he once boasted about, my palace, he called it, was sold to pay debts. His expensive cars, his jewelry, even the watches he used to flaunt were taken away. But the harshest blow was not the loss of wealth. It was the loss of respect. For a man like my son, respect was his oxygen. He lived for admiration, for applause, for the envy of others. And now, when he walked the streets, people did not bow. They spat. They called him a fraud, a cheat, a thief. Children in the market mocked him, chanting his name with laughter. Women who once dreamed of marrying him now crossed the street to avoid him. One evening, fate put me in his path again. I had gone to the city to meet a lawyer about new land deeds. On my way back, I passed the railway station. There, near the tea stalls, I saw him. My son. But he was not the Armin I once knew. His suit was torn, his shoes dusty. His beard had grown wild, his hair uncombed. He sat on a wooden bench, staring at the ground, holding a single piece of bread in his hand as if it were treasure. Beside him was a plastic bag, his only possession now. I froze. My chest tightened. I wanted to step forward, to put my hand on his shoulder, to tell him, Baba is here. You are not alone. My heart screamed it, but my mind reminded me of the night he threw me out of his wedding, the day he declared me dead, the words he spoke to the world. I come from nothing. I owe no one. So I stayed hidden, watching him like a ghost. And as I stood there, I realized something. This was not yet the moment. His punishment was not complete. For all his wealth gone, for all his pride broken, he had not yet faced the truth. He had not yet recognized the father he had betrayed. He had not yet looked into my eyes and felt the weight of what he had done. That moment, I was saving for the end. Still, my heart twisted as I watched him. His hands trembled as he lifted the bread to his mouth. People walked past him, some mocking, some ignoring him entirely. A few coins lay scattered on the ground near his feet. Someone must have thrown them at him like scraps. My son, my blood, reduced to a beggar in the same city where he once ruled like a king. I turned away, my fists clenched. The night air felt heavy. As I walked, I whispered to myself, this is the fire of karma, my son. This is what you lit with your own arrogance. But the final ember, the final flame, that belongs to me. In the days that followed, his downfall became complete. No one lent him money. No one gave him shelter. Even his relatives, those who once swarmed around him when he was rich, pretended not to know him. He wandered from street to street, his name now a curse in the mouths of those he had cheated. And yet, I remained patient. Because revenge, true revenge, is not simply watching someone fall. It is watching them realize who pushed them into the abyss. And that moment, the moment of revelation, was coming. I had prepared for years. I had built my fortune in silence. I had risen from the grave he buried me in. Now, all that remained was to reveal myself, to show him that the father he had killed with lies was the one who stood tall, while he lay broken in the dust. The world had taken everything from him, but I would take the last thing he still clung to, the illusion that I was gone forever. The end was near. The day finally came. For years, I had lived in silence, building my fortune from scraps, watching from the shadows as my son rose on arrogance and fell into ruin. I had seen him crowned as a king and stripped to a beggar. But still, there was one last wound he had not yet received, the wound of truth. He thought I was dead. He buried me in his heart long ago, when he chose pride over blood. The world believed his lies. But now, it was time for him to see the father he killed standing before him, alive, stronger, and untouchable. That evening, I dressed differently. For the first time in years, I did not wear my torn corda or patched shoes. I wore clean clothes, simple but strong, and combed my hair. I carried the calm dignity of a man who no longer begged for respect but commanded candidate. Through trusted men in the city, I arranged the stage. A hall was rented. Ironically, the same kind of hall he once threw me out of on his wedding night. The city's merchants, investors, and leaders were invited to a business announcement. They came curious. For months, they had wondered who this silent figure was. The man who had been buying land, rescuing failing businesses, and rising quietly in wealth while others collapsed. That man was me. And among the crowd, dressed in rags, was Armin. I had made sure of it. Word was spread that food would be served, and like many of the fallen, he came for a free meal. He walked in with sunken eyes, unshaven, his body carrying the shame of hunger. No one recognized him at first. The mighty golden sun had been reduced so low that even his former rivals overlooked him. I stood at the front of the hall. The murmurs died down. All eyes turned toward me. My friends, I began, my voice calm but firm. I stand before you today not as a beggar, not as a forgotten man, but as proof that patience and truth cannot be buried forever. Years ago, I was cast out, declared worthless. My own flesh and blood erased my existence. But what rises from soil cannot be erased. I stand here, the owner of lands across 3 towns, the silent investor in businesses you all know. I am the man you wondered about. I am the ghost who returned. The crowd clapped, but in the corner of the hall, Armin lifted his head. His eyes widened. He had recognized my voice. I turned toward him. Our eyes met for the first time in years. The blood drained from his face. He trembled as if he had seen a spirit. He stumbled forward, whispering, "No, this cannot be. You are dead." I let silence hang for a moment, then answered, my voice heavy with all the years of betrayal.
"No, Armin.
You killed me. The night you erased me from your life. The day you told the world you came from nothing. That was the day I died. But death gave me strength. And now I live again. Not as your father, but as the shadow of the man you betrayed." The hall grew still. People whispered, realizing the truth. Reporters scribbled, hungry for the story. And Armin, my son, once proud, once untouchable, fell to his knees. "Baba," he cried, his voice breaking. "Forgive me. I was blind, arrogant, a fool. I thought wealth would make me greater than you. I thought hiding you would raise me higher. But it destroyed me. And you rose where I fell." Tears ran down his face, mixing with the dirt on his cheeks. The crowd watched, some pitying him, others satisfied at his humiliation. I stepped closer, my shadow falling over him. For a long moment, I said nothing. Then I spoke the words I had carried for years. "You wanted the world to believe you came from nothing. Now you truly have nothing. And the father you buried in lies stands above you. This is your karma, Armin. This is the justice of the blood you betrayed." He reached for my feet, but I stepped back. My heart ached, but I did not let it soften. "Forgiveness is for sons who honor their fathers," I said coldly. "You are no son of mine. You killed that bond long ago. I will not strike you. I will not curse you. Life has already done that. But I will not embrace you either. You wanted me dead, so let me remain dead to you." His sobs echoed through the hall. He clutched the ground, begging, but I turned away. The men of the city surrounded me, offering respect, shaking my hand, hailing me as a man of resilience. And in the corner, the once golden sun lay broken, drowning in the ashes of his own empire, haunted by the living ghost of the father he had buried. I walked out of the hall into the night air, the weight of years lifting from my shoulders. Revenge was complete, not through violence, not through cruelty, but through truth. And truth, I learned, is the sharpest blade of all. Thank you for watching this story. Do you believe justice was served? Tell me in the comments. And remember, if you have lived through betrayal, heartbreak, or revenge, your story matters. Send it to me using the link below, and it might be the next one featured here. Subscribe and share this channel, because together, we turn pain into power.